Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to this next series of lessons. This series of lessons we're going to be taking a look at jazz guitar. We're going to be taking a look primarily at the harmony, the chords, and the progressions. So this is going to be kind of starting from, ground zero basically. So it's going to be great for a lot of guys that are coming from more like a rock or blues background and just want to learn jazz. But it's also going to be good for some intermediate players too, because we're going to be taking a look at learning chords a little bit differently than a lot of guys start out, and we're going to be starting kind of the process with shell voicings, which are basically 3-note chords, and going to be some pretty easy shapes so that you guys can start comping and playing through jazz standards pretty quickly and mastering a lot of these shapes, and most importantly understanding the harmony and understanding how things chords are leading from one to the next. Jazz a lot of times is identified by, the use of 7 chords, 9 chords, 11, 13, by these extended chord voicings. So a lot of times the tendency is that we'll learn really big chord voicings, like across 6 strings or 5 strings, but then not really know exactly what to do with them. And not really necessarily know how to lead them from one chord to the next, or we'll be covering more fretboard territory than we'd like to. So I love these shell voicings because it starts us out really simply and they're easy to master. They're really easy to see how each tone is moving from one to the next, which is vitally important to understanding jazz well. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at, just kind of starting out on, and then from there we'll really kind of ramp things up. But at any rate, one thing I want to say before we get into the actual lesson is, if you guys haven't yet heard of this YouTube channel, I just heard of it a couple weeks ago. It's called Learn Jazz Standards. I'd highly recommend checking out that YouTube channel. It is fantastic. They've got a ton of standards on there and really high quality backing tracks, and all the chord charts as well, which is awesome. So as we're learning all these shapes, and all the chords and everything, you guys can always have something to go back to and and practice along. And that's vitally important, is just to be playing to music, and using these ideas that we're working on with music, because it's definitely one thing to just be practicing these voicings and there's nothing in the background. You can kind of take your time from one voicing to the next, but then when you're playing along with something, you really find out how well all these voicings and everything. So yeah, I just say go and check out that channel as we're learning this stuff, and play along to a lot of the tracks. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get into these first couple of shapes. Alright guys, so the first shape we're going to take a look at is going to be basically a note on the low E, skipped string on the A, and then 2 adjacent notes on the D and the G. Okay, now we're going to take a look at these with just one main shape and then change that around to get all our qualities. So for instance, major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, all that good stuff. So it's going to be really nice, really simple to learn. So this is going to start out, we're going to have pointer finger on the low E at the 8th fret, and that's going to be our root note. Middle finger on the 9th fret of the D, that's going to be our 7th. Ring finger, 9th fret of the G, that's going to be our 3rd. So that's going to give us a major 7 chord. And it's really important to memorize where all the tones are within these, so where your root is, your 3rd, your 7th. Okay, and again the root is on the low E, so here would be C, B flat, A flat, G, F, G. So just kind of move that around, get comfortable with that voicing. Okay, so next up we're going to be taking a look at the dominant 7. All we're going to do to get a dominant 7, C dominant 7 again, is going to be move the middle finger 1 fret towards the head. That's dominant 7 right there. Okay, so that is our dominant 7 shape. Again, get comfortable with that, move that around. Okay, now minor 7, we're going to change things around slightly for the shape. Pointer finger is going to come off and the middle finger is going to swap out with that. Ring is going to go to the 8th fret of the D, pinky is going to go to the 8th fret of the G. Okay, that's our minor 7 shape. Okay, again, move that around, get nice and comfortable with that. And then this also is going to double as a minor 7 flat 5. Okay, if we want to throw the flat 5 in there, we can do it like this. Here's a fingering. Pointer is going to be on the low E. Okay, same fret. Ring, 9th fret of the A, middle, 8th fret of the D. And we get our flat 5 in there, and I'd recommend just resolving that up to the standard minor 7 shape. But at least then you can get that flat 5 in there. Okay, now the last shape is a minor 6 chord. Now what we're going to do is take our ring finger off, put our pointer finger 1 fret below where our ring finger was, or 1 fret towards the head, and then replace our pinky with our ring. And that's a minor 6, and it also doubles as a fully diminished 7 chord. Okay, so move that around, and this can obviously, moves the same way as all the rest of them, so the root is still on the low E. Okay, so yeah, those are our main shapes with the, we'll just call it, just for simplicity's sake, as we get into comping, we'll just call that shape 1. So now I'd recommend maybe taking this through like a really simple progression, like maybe a standard. Let's just take all the things you are. So just going to start with F minor 7, B flat minor 7. We're going to have E flat dominant 7, A flat major 7. Okay, then D flat major 7. Okay, and then so on and so forth. But yeah, that's doing way more moving than we should be. It's not voice leading at all or anything like that. But just to get the shapes, obviously under your fingers, and just start playing those to an actual progression. So let's take a look now at shape 2. Alright guys, so shape 2, we'll take a look at this starting from the C note once again, but this time the C is going to be on the A string. So we're going to have middle finger, 3rd fret of the A, pointer, 2nd fret of the D, ring, 4th fret of the G. And this time the order of tones is going to be root, 3rd, 7th. Okay. Now the root is the lowest note we hear, so F, E flat, D flat, and then C. Okay, so that's our major 7 shape right there. And now let's move the ring 1 fret towards the head, and we get dominant 7. Okay, so that's our dominant 7 shape. And you can use all these in just the standard blues progression too, something like that, just to get them under your fingers. So now let's go to a minor 7 shape, where your middle is right now. Replace that with your ring. Move your pointer 1 fret towards the head, and add your pinky to the 3rd fret of the G. It's a minor 7 shape, and that sounds really nice. Okay, really nice minor 7 shape. And again, for all these, we still only have the root, the 3rd, and then the 7th. Okay, now minor 6. All that we're going to do, minor 6 or diminished 7, all that we're going to do is take our pinky off, put our middle finger 1 fret towards the head where our pinky was. So that's going to be 2nd fret of the G. And that is our minor 6 or fully diminished 7 chord. Okay, so those are all our chords, and I would say also do the same thing for this set of strings now, like take just a, just a standard chord progression, and use these shapes. Obviously, again, won't be voice leading, but you'll get the idea of just getting the shapes under your fingers. Okay, so let's take a look now at how to voice lead these 2 shapes. And again, we're going to think of this just simply as shape 2, and this is going to be shape 1. And actually, maybe just move those shapes back and forth between each other. So start with maybe a C minor for shape 1, then move it to shape 2, still a C minor. And then maybe F minor, shape 1, shape 2. Okay, so just to kind of get how each shape sounds differently and where the tones are in relation to the root. Okay, so let's take a look at voice leading these from one to the next, and also some progressions. Alright, so a really simple way to explain voice leading would just be, as we switch chords, we try to keep each tone moving as little as possible from one chord to the next. That's just a really simple, quick explanation of what voice leading actually is. But just try to think, or even keeping common tones in the chord as we're moving. That's just a quick explanation, moving as little, if at all, as possible. So hopefully that makes sense. We'll take a look at some progressions quick though to help this make more sense. So we're going to be switching out with the progressions now between the two shapes. So we're going to start with just a 2-5-1, which is going to be, the 2 is going to be minor 7. Okay, the 5 is going to be dominant 7. The 1 is going to be major 7. Okay, so we're going to start just from C, and I should say that a 2-5-1 normally to a major chord. Okay, so in this case, the resolution is going to a major chord. The 2-5-1 is going to be minor 7, dominant 7, major 7. If this was a resolution to a minor 7 chord, okay, so if we were playing this to, let's say, like A minor 7, normally the chords are going to be minor 7 flat 5, dominant 7, or dominant 7 altered is going to be the 5 chord, and then the 1 chord is going to be like a minor chord, like a minor 7 or a minor 6. So that's normally kind of how those are going to be working. So it just depends if it's going to be resolving to a minor chord or if it's going to be resolving to a major chord. That's very, very important to keep in mind. At any rate, let's take a look at just a 2-5-1 resolving to C major. Okay, so here's what this is going to look like. We're going to use shape 1. Okay, the shape 1 minor 7 shape. Okay, shape 2 dominant 7 shape starting from G on the A string. Shape 1 starting from C, so we get our major 7. Okay, so there is our progression. So again, that's D minor 7, G dominant 7, then we get our C major 7. Okay, let's do this now starting, because we started on shape 1, let's now start from shape 2 with the D minor 7, which shape 2 will be down here, 5th fret with the ring. And then just add our minor 7. Okay, now we're going to go to shape 1 as a dominant 7. Then shape 2 is a major 7. So we get D, G, C. And also pay attention how our roots are moving. So for instance, here is 2, 5, 1. And here is 2, 5, 1. Okay? So good to play those in both positions, or both spots on the fretboard. Okay, so there is those shapes. And now, you know, you could obviously like play that as minor, which it's not really going to be much different. The 1 chord is just going to be minor 7 or minor 6. Okay, we could add that flat 5 in there. Okay, minor 7 or minor 6. Okay, and something that I just remembered I forgot to mention is that for, like, let's take our minor 7 shape from D. If we want to add the flat 5 into shape 2, okay, here's what the shape is going to look like. Right now, replace your ring with your pinky, your pointer with your middle, and add your pointer to the 1st fret of the G. So there we can add that flat 5 in if we want to, and then just resolve to the original shape. Okay, so at any rate, there's a minor 2-5-1. Okay, so now that we got these down again, let's just take all the things you are once again. So here's our F minor 7, shape 2, B flat minor 7, shape 1. Okay, E flat dominant 7, shape 2, A flat major 7, shape 1. D flat major 7, shape 2. Okay, so hopefully you guys are kind of seeing how all those tones are moving. Now it's important, let's just go back to a 2-5-1 in C for a second. Let's look at how these tones are actually moving from one to the next. In this case, the 7th is going to become the 3rd. We move to G. The 3rd is going to become the 7th, and it's going to be a common tone. Now a common tone is a tone that doesn't change from one chord to the next. So we get that right there. So there's G dominant 7. Now when it moves to C major 7, what's actually happening here is the 3rd is becoming the 7th, and then the 7th is becoming the 3rd. So you can kind of see a little pattern developing there with how these tones are changing from one to the next. And it's also worth just doing this on just the two sets of, normally we hear this voice leading a lot on the D and G strings. So you can also just do this progression without the root note. And then you can hear how each of those tones are moving. Even if we took like a blues, you can hear how those tones are moving back and forth. So how they're voice leading from one to the next. So pay attention to that really closely as you're playing these progressions. Just kind of see like, how each tone is moving from one to the next. Okay, now to practice these, obviously play these along to standards, but if you're just kind of noodling around and you want to practice them a little bit and you're not sure what to do after you play a 2-5-1, because obviously you don't want to just sit around doing this all day, a couple ways to move these are in half steps. So for instance, that time we resolve to C major 7, now we're going to resolve a half step towards the head. So now instead of resolving to C major 7, we're going to resolve to B major 7. Now we're going to resolve to B flat major 7. So we're just playing 2-5-1s, just moving down the fretboard. So hopefully you guys can kind of get the idea of how we're doing that. So move them in half steps or in whole steps as well. So in this case, D, G, C. Now we resolve to C. So now let's resolve to D. So we just move that in a whole step. Now let's go back down to C. Now it's a B flat. Now to A flat. So you can kind of see how these are resolving, and you can also move them in minor thirds. So let's do a 2-5-1 to G. So shape 1, shape 2, shape 1. Okay, now a minor third from G. And we're always looking from the 1 chord where we're going to move to next. So 2-5-1. Okay, a minor third from G is the B flat. So we're going to do a 2-5-1 now to B flat. So that would be C minor 7, F dominant 7, B flat major 7. So, or you could do it as a major third. So 2-5-1 to G, major third would be G to B. So the B would be the major third. So we're going to do a 2-5-1 to G, then a 2-5-1 to B. Okay, now here comes a 2-5-1 to B. Okay, so those are just 4 different ways you can move them: half steps, whole steps, minor third, major third, and you can really get a lot of good practice in on your 2-5-1s. And like we had talked about, make sure you're doing 2-5-1s starting with shape 1, but also starting with shape 2 as well. So yeah, that's kind of just the start of looking at all these chords and the progressions and all that good stuff. We still have a lot more ground to cover, but make sure you really get a great mastery of these basic shapes here and take them through a lot of jazz standards. Pay attention to all the tones are moving from one to the next. Make sure you're using the different shapes and trying to voice lead as best as you can, keeping the shapes as close together as possible. And I would say, you don't really have a complete mastery of these unless you can really, I'd say comp through, any standard, and not get lost with the chords you're playing. So yeah, at any rate, work these out, really get a solid understanding of them. Something else you can try just as a random side note is just approach by half step. So what you could do is, for instance, let's take a 2-5-1 to C, approach this G dominant 7 with a G sharp dominant 7, okay, and you can do that with any of the chords. And it doesn't necessarily matter what quality you use, just try approaching them with different random chords just from half step below or above and then resolving into the actual chord, and you can do that with the 2, the 5, or the 1. So yeah, work all that stuff out. Make sure you're really comfortable with these voicings, and then next week we're going to take a look at inversion to smooth out the voice leading and the bass, actually make things a little smoother, and then also adding some tones into these to get some bigger extensions going on. So I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson, and I will see you all back here next week again. Thanks so much, everyone.